Lost in Whispering Pines Forest. The sun was setting over the small town of Elder Grove, Wisconsin, casting long shadows across the quiet streets. It was a crisp autumn evening on October. Lost in Whispering Pines Forest. The sun was setting over the small town of Elder Grove, Wisconsin, casting long shadows across the quiet streets. It was a crisp autumn evening on October 15th, with temperatures dropping to a cool 48 degrees Fahrenheit. The air carried the earthy scent of fallen leaves and pine needles, creating an atmosphere both peaceful and slightly eerie. Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from, and what time is it there? Michael Carter, a 32-year-old forest ranger with 10 years of experience, had been conducting his usual evening patrol through Whispering Pines Forest, a vast woodland spanning over 20 acres. The forest earned its name from the gentle rustling sound made by its towering pines, a sound that locals believed carried whispers from past generations. As Michael approached the northern section of the forest near Bear Claw Ridge, he noticed something unusual about the weather patterns. The wind had suddenly shifted direction, coming from the northeast instead of the usual southwest. This change in wind direction often preceded unexpected storms in the area, but today's forecast had predicted clear skies throughout the night. At precisely 6:17 p.m., Michael's radio crackled to life with a routine check-in call from the main station. "Ranger Carter, this is Station Alpha. How do you copy?" The voice came through clearly despite the growing distance between them. "Station Alpha, this is Ranger Carter. I copy loud and clear," Michael responded calmly, maintaining his professional tone. Continuing his patrol along Trail 7B, Michael encountered Emily Thompson, a local botanist who had been studying rare plant species in the area. She was crouched near a cluster of autumn gold mushrooms, carefully documenting their growth patterns. The two exchanged greetings, discussing recent observations about the forest's ecosystem. Emily mentioned noticing an unusually high number of migrating birds passing through earlier that day, which could indicate changing weather patterns. As darkness began to settle over the forest, Michael decided to take a different route back to the main station, one that passed through Moonlit Hollow, a section of the forest known for its dramatic rock formations illuminated by moonlight. The path was familiar to him, having walked it countless times during his tenure as a ranger. However, at around 7:34 p.m., Michael's GPS device began acting strangely, showing erratic signals and occasional blackouts. He tried resetting the device several times, but the problem persisted. The digital compass spun wildly, unable to determine true north. This phenomenon wasn't entirely uncommon in Whispering Pines Forest, where dense tree coverage sometimes interfered with electronic devices. Concerned, but not yet alarmed, Michael pulled out his traditional map and compass, tools he always carried as backup. Consulting these instruments, he confirmed his location near the base of Whispering Cliff, approximately 3 miles from the nearest road. The cliff itself stood majestically against the darkening sky, its jagged edges silhouetted by the fading sunlight. Suddenly, the temperature dropped significantly, causing Michael to pause and reconsider his situation. The wind had picked up, carrying with it a strange, almost musical quality, like distant bells ringing softly in the background. This particular sound was one of the forest's many mysteries, often reported by visitors but never fully explained. Deciding caution was warranted, Michael activated his emergency beacon, sending a signal to the main station indicating his current coordinates and status. "Station Alpha, this is Ranger Carter. My GPS is malfunctioning. I'm proceeding cautiously toward Road 45. Over," he transmitted steadily, keeping his voice calm despite the developing circumstances. As he continued walking, the forest seemed to grow darker than normal, even though the moon was nearly full. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, dancing across the ground in ways that defied logic. Michael's flashlight beam revealed patches of silver frost forming on the trees despite the relatively mild temperature. At approximately 8:12 p.m., Michael encountered a group of 4 hikers returning from an extended camping trip. They were led by David Peterson, an experienced outdoorsman from Chicago who frequently visited Whispering Pines Forest. The group appeared disoriented, claiming they had lost track of time while exploring some lesser-known trails. Michael offered guidance, directing them toward the safest route back to their vehicles. During this encounter, Michael noticed something peculiar about the hikers' descriptions of their journey. They spoke of seeing lights moving through the trees, lights that seemed to follow specific patterns rather than being random reflections or fireflies. This observation aligned with stories told by previous visitors, tales of mysterious luminous phenomena within the forest. After ensuring the hikers were heading in the right direction, Michael resumed his journey, now more alert to his surroundings. The forest had grown eerily silent, all wildlife seemingly retreating deeper into the woods. Even the usual sounds of insects and nocturnal creatures had faded away, leaving only the whispering of the pines to accompany him. By 9:07 p.m., Michael reached the edge of Whispering Lake, a serene body of water surrounded by ancient trees whose roots twisted dramatically into the ground. The lake's surface reflected the stars above, creating a breathtaking display of light and shadow. However, upon closer inspection, Michael noticed ripples forming in the water without any apparent cause. No wind, no movement, just subtle waves disturbing the otherwise perfect mirror. Realizing he needed to document this unusual occurrence, Michael retrieved his journal from his pack, recording detailed observations about the weather conditions, the behavior of his equipment, and the strange phenomena witnessed throughout the evening. Each entry was methodical, written with the precision expected of a professional ranger. As midnight approached, the forest transformed once again. The whispering sounds intensified, becoming more pronounced and rhythmic, almost like a natural symphony performed by the trees themselves. Michael found himself drawn to a particular area near Echo Point, a spot known for its unique acoustics. Here, the sounds seemed amplified, creating an immersive experience that felt both grounding and surreal. Throughout the night, Michael maintained contact with Station Alpha, updating them on his observations and movements. By dawn, the strange occurrences had subsided, leaving behind only the ordinary beauty of Whispering Pines Forest. Yet, the events of that evening would remain etched in his memory, serving as a reminder of the forest's enduring mysteries and the importance of respecting nature's unpredictable patterns. Forest Ranger's darkest discovery. The early morning mist clung to the dense woods of Blackwater National Forest, shrouding the landscape in an eerie stillness. It was 5:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, when most people in the nearby town of Willow Creek were still asleep. The air carried the damp scent of earth and decaying leaves, creating an atmosphere that felt both ancient and alive. Thomas Reed, a seasoned forest ranger with 15 years of experience, began his daily patrol along Trail 12A, known locally as Shadow Path. The trail wound through some of the oldest sections of the forest, where trees stood like silent sentinels guarding centuries of secrets. Thomas had walked this path countless times, but today, something felt different, almost heavy in the air. As he approached the 3-mile marker, near the bend where Old Man's Creek crossed the trail, Thomas noticed an unusual disturbance in the underbrush. The leaves were crushed, branches broken, as if something large had passed through recently. He paused, listening intently, but heard only the distant call of a barred owl. its hoot echoing through the trees, sending chills down his spine. At 6:18 a.m., while checking his equipment at the halfway point, Thomas's radio crackled to life. "Ranger Reed, this is Station Bravo. How do you copy?" The voice came through clear, despite the thick canopy above. "Station Bravo, this is Ranger Reed. I copy loud and clear," Thomas replied steadily, though his mind was preoccupied with the strange signs he'd observed earlier. Continuing deeper into the forest, Thomas encountered Mark Hollister, a geologist conducting research on the unique rock formations found in this area. They exchanged greetings, discussing recent geological changes observed in the region. Mark mentioned noticing increased seismic activity beneath the forest floor, though nothing significant enough to cause concern yet. By 7:32 a.m., Thomas reached the northernmost section of his patrol, an area known as Whispering Hollow. Here, the trees seemed to lean inward, their branches intertwining to form a natural cathedral of green and brown. The sunlight struggled to penetrate the thick canopy, leaving the ground in perpetual shadow. It was here that Thomas made his first unsettling discovery: a collection of animal bones scattered across the forest floor, arranged in what appeared to be deliberate patterns. He crouched carefully, examining the remains without disturbing them. The bones belonged to various forest creatures, from small rodents to larger deer, all showing signs of having been stripped clean by something methodical rather than random predation. A feeling of unease settled over Thomas, prompting him to document the scene thoroughly before continuing his patrol. At precisely 8:09 a.m., Thomas stumbled upon another anomaly, this time near the base of Sentinel Rock. A massive stone formation jutting out from the earth like a guardian watching over the forest. Etched into the rock's surface were symbols, crude carvings, resembling ancient runes or pictographs. The carvings appeared fresh, as if created within the last few days, yet bore no resemblance to any known Native American markings or modern graffiti. Concerned about these discoveries, Thomas activated his emergency beacon, transmitting a coded message to Station Bravo indicating his location and findings. "Station Bravo, this is Ranger Reed. I have discovered unusual activity, possible vandalism, or something more. Requesting immediate assistance. Over," he transmitted calmly, though his heart raced beneath his professional demeanor. While waiting for a response, Thomas decided to explore further, following a faint trail leading away from Sentinel Rock. The path grew narrower, forcing him to proceed cautiously, his flashlight beam cutting through the increasing darkness. At 9:23 a.m., he reached a clearing he hadn't seen before. Hidden deep within the forest's embrace, the clearing was unlike anything else in the area. Surrounded by trees twisted into unnatural shapes, their bark blackened as if scorched by fire. In the center of the clearing stood an object that defied explanation, a structure composed of what appeared to be human bones, intricately woven together to form a crude altar. Surrounding the altar were remnants of rituals, burnt offerings, charred feathers, and fragments of pottery bearing similar markings to those found on Sentinel Rock. The sight sent a wave of nausea through Thomas, forcing him to step back and reevaluate the situation. Realizing the importance of documenting this find, Thomas retrieved his camera and journal, meticulously recording every detail. Each photograph captured not just evidence, but also the weight of responsibility settling upon his shoulders. This was no ordinary discovery. It represented something far beyond his understanding, something that demanded careful consideration and respect. As midday approached, the forest began to shift once again. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, moving independently of the sun's position. The temperature dropped significantly, causing Thomas to pull his jacket tighter around him. Birds stopped singing. Insects ceased their constant hum, leaving only the sound of his own breathing to fill the silence. By 12:45 p.m., a team from Station Bravo arrived, led by James Carter, a fellow ranger with 20 years of experience. Together, they secured the area, ensuring no evidence was disturbed while awaiting instructions from higher authorities. During their discussion, James shared stories of similar discoveries made decades ago, accounts dismissed at the time as mere folklore or exaggeration. Throughout the afternoon, the two rangers worked tirelessly, mapping the site, collecting samples, and preparing detailed reports. As dusk settled over the forest, casting long shadows across the clearing, they both felt the weight of what they had uncovered. This wasn't just an archaeological find. It was a piece of history, perhaps even prehistory, waiting to be understood. By nightfall, the team had completed their initial assessment, packing up their equipment, and heading back toward civilization. The journey out of the forest felt longer, more arduous, as if the woods themselves resisted their departure along the way. Thomas couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, followed by eyes unseen but ever present. Upon returning to Station Bravo, Thomas submitted his report, detailing every observation and discovery made during the day. The document would eventually reach experts in archaeology, anthropology, and environmental science, sparking debates and investigations that would continue for years. But for Thomas Reed, the experience marked a turning point, a reminder of how much there was still to learn about the world around us, and how little we truly understand about the places we think we know best. Vanished without a trace, the morning air was crisp and cool, carrying the faint scent of pine needles and damp earth as the sun peeked over the horizon. It was 6:47 a.m. on a Thursday in the small town of Maplewood, nestled deep within the heart of Colorado's Rocky Mountain Range. The quiet streets were still blanketed by an early autumn mist, giving the town an almost ethereal quality. At the edge of Whispering Pines Forest, a vast woodland spanning hundreds of acres, stood Ethan Carter, a park ranger with 12 years of experience patrolling these rugged terrains. His boots crunched against the gravel path as he began his routine morning patrol along Trail 14B, known locally as Shadow Ridge Path. The trail wound through some of the densest sections of the forest where sunlight struggled to penetrate the thick canopy above. Today, however, something felt different, almost heavy in the air. As Ethan approached the 2-mile marker near Raven's Hollow, he noticed an unusual disturbance in the underbrush. Leaves were crushed, branches broken, as if something or someone had passed through recently. He paused, listening intently, but heard only the distant call of a red-tailed hawk, its cry echoing through the trees and sending shivers down his spine. The forest seemed unusually silent, devoid of its usual chorus of birdsong and rustling wildlife. By 7:23 a.m., while checking his equipment at the halfway point, Ethan's radio crackled to life. "Ranger Carter, this is Station Delta. How do you copy?" The voice came through clear despite the thick foliage overhead. "Station Delta, this is Ranger Carter. I copy loud and clear." Ethan replied steadily, though his mind was preoccupied with the strange signs he'd observed earlier. A feeling of unease settled over him as he continued deeper into the forest. Further along the trail, Ethan encountered Liam Thompson, a geologist conducting research on the unique mineral formations found in this area. They exchanged greetings, discussing recent geological changes observed in the region. Liam mentioned noticing increased seismic activity beneath the forest floor, though nothing significant enough to cause alarm. Yet, their conversation was brief but informative, adding another layer of intrigue to Ethan's already growing curiosity about the forest's behavior. At 8:15 a.m., Ethan reached the northernmost section of his patrol, an area known as Silent Glen. Here, the trees seemed to lean inward, their branches intertwining to form a natural cathedral of green and brown. The sunlight